All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining. I'm Stephanie Pepper, eManage 1, and today we are completing our Back to the Basics series, part 9 of 9. So we are going to wrap up with reporting, grid functionalities, and some different just tips and tricks with those items. So I'm just going to go over what I would consider most of the basics, but there are a few different little tips and tricks I am going to share that maybe some of you haven't seen before. And the idea behind going through grid layouts especially and the different functionalities with grids is that once you learn one grid, you can do all the different grids. So it really does help when it comes to reporting and being able to customize different layouts and different reports to better manage your business. So we're going to jump right in. So to get started, I'm going to go over, again, grids and how they function. So first things first, a few basics. So I'm just in the current opportunities grid. So today, current opportunities. When I refer to grids, I really do mean like anything that you see. It's kind of like Excel. They have columns, column headers. When you highlight certain things, it becomes interactive. So anything where you see that looks like a grid, where you literally have lines of data inside a grid, that's what I'm considering a grid. And they're all over the place in the system. So every single grid has its own set of fields. And so I'm going to go over the field chooser. So in every single grid, so today, current opportunities, this grid is going to be specific to current opportunities. If I went into today, current backlog, I'm going to have a whole different set of fields that I can put in that report. So to get to your field chooser, what you're going to do is select this in the very top left corner. That's where it's always going to be. That's your field chooser. So if you just highlight over it, it says click here to show field chooser. So when you click there, and if I can just drag out so you can see your different options here. These are a list of different columns that you could put in this grid. So if you have a custom, default company layout, you may not even realize that you have access to all these other fields inside of current opportunities. Again, each grid is going to have its own set of fields. So they're going to be different per grid, okay? But basically how this works is I can go through and I can just check mark them, and it'll put them in here somewhere, right? And then I can go grab them and move them around. But my preferred way is to grab them and drag and drop them onto the grid. So I know exactly where I want to put it. I'm grabbing and holding down my mouse and dragging and dropping until I see those little arrows. And that's where it's saying, okay, I'm going to put it in between project name and decision date. And I just let go of my mouse and it drops that right in there. So again, you can uncheck and recheck if you want to, but I like to grab and drag and drop. If you don't want something, uncheck and it removes it, or you can grab it and just drag and drop it off of the grid. So when you see that little X, it means I'm grabbing it and removing it. You're never removing them permanently from a field, so don't be concerned with that I'm deleting it for anyone to see. That's not the case here. You're just modifying this one particular grid. Okay, so I'm just grabbing them and dragging and dropping off what I don't want to see on this particular report or grid. Okay, so the field chooser are pretty easy to work with. Moving columns around and removing them, I just showed you how to remove. So moving them, you can just grab them and literally move them around. Okay. What you can also do is sort them. So you can see this one right now is sorted by decision date. So if I just click right on top of a column header, you're going to sort them either alphabetically or numerically. If I click them again, so there's a little triangle that's saying large, the large side of the triangle to the small. So large to small. If I click it again, that's small to large. So that applies with text and numbers. And I'll get to how you can add multiple sorts in just a moment. Some other things here. If I right click on top of any of these columns, you're going to get a couple of options here. So if you're not seeing that filter icon, the little funnel, the way that I'm seeing it, that means that your filtering may be turned off. So right click on top of any of the headers, and you could turn filtering on or off. And I'll go over what filtering is. And then you have sum, so I can turn sums on and off, groupings on and off. And this one's to expand and collapse rows. So quickly I can just hit that and it'll expand all the rows. I click it again and it'll collapse all the rows back in. Find this helpful maybe in the BOM when looking at options. Also helpful maybe in the purchase order screen. So there's a few different areas that expanding everything at once when one click could be pretty helpful. But typically I just leave that off. The fourth one over is toggling your column freezing. So you can turn your column freezing on or off. And same for the row freezing. These functions that I'm going over are also going to be in your grid functions, which I'll explore here soon. But this is just a quick way to get to those items that you might be using pretty often. I really like the filter, the sums, and the groupings. And I'll go over what each one of those are. Underneath that, you can select all rows if you need to. You know, that can be helpful. You can copy all rows and paste them outside of the program if you need to. Configuring editable fields. So I can actually go through and make these fields editable if they're not already. If you have our company-wide default layout, if you haven't already, your admin definitely needs to go in and go File, Import Default Grid Layout. That's pretty much standard. Every time that you get an update, your company should do that. The admin only has to do it once, and then you're going to get all of our default layouts automatically. So if you have our default layouts, you're going to notice that a lot of these are already made editable. But if for some reason you get across to a field that you feel like should be editable, there are going to be some that you can't make editable. A lot of them you can. So let's say I want to make something editable, which most of these are already, but I'll just walk through how to do so. I can right-click, configure editable fields. This is also in your grid functions. So I'll show you how to get there. You can see we have a lot of different fields that are editable. So for example, project status. Okay, so what you do down here is hit new, tell it what field you want to make editable. In the current opportunities, I think it may be the only grid that has the function to choose the different grid bands. We've connected current opportunities and quotes into one view. So if you're trying to make something editable that you don't see in this editable field, it could be that you need to drop this grid band down and grab the other view. Okay, so if you don't see what you're looking for in this drop down, you may need to change the grid band. These are just different views. So you would select which field you want to make editable. This is the tricky part when you're configuring editable fields. I highly encourage anyone who's trying to make something editable. If you don't already have something editable, you might want to just call into support, find out what the database table is. This can be kind of difficult to know which database table to connect it to. If you choose the wrong one and you try to change, let's say, the status from new opportunity to ordered, something like that within this grid, it may look like the change is taken, but if you close out of this grid and get back in it or open up the project, you're going to see that the status wasn't flipped. So you want to make sure that you're connecting it to the right database table. So if you've messed with this a little bit and you have come across that situation that I just explained, it's that you've connected it to the wrong database table. Call into support. They should know which table to connect it to, or at least be able to get that information for you and get back to you. Okay. Once you choose a database table, it will automatically put an identity column to it. Okay, so you shouldn't have to override that whatsoever. You can also tell it, you can apply application rights to editable fields. So if you only want a certain group of people to be able to manipulate that field within the grid, you can absolutely choose one of these rights. Maybe it's only your admin. So you say, okay, if you have this right, you are able to configure this field. Whichever field you're making editable. And then you can also, lastly, and both of these are options. You can see these are the only required fields that you do have to fill in. But lastly, drop-down list. If it is a drop-down item, you wouldn't want to leave this out. So for example, project status. That's a drop-down selection. If you did not connect it to a drop-down, it would look like it was kind of a free-form field, and you wouldn't want people just to be manipulating that drop down as something that's not existing. But there are some fields like project name. That's an editable field, configured right now as an editable field, but that's not connected to a dropdown. It's a free form. Once you do all those, you'll just hit save. I do see some questions coming in. I'm going to get to those in just a moment, okay? Don't think that I'm ignoring your question. I will cover questions here at the end. Okay, so editing, configuring editable fields. A couple of refreshes throughout the system. You know, we'll definitely be looking at these here in the near future. These in this particular grid don't work, but the refresh button at the bottom right does. I'll always say, safe to say, if you're trying to refresh something and you don't see an exposed refresh button, those should all work just fine. If you don't see that button, you know, it's always safe to just close out of that grid and get back in it to see what changes you've made. Or if anybody's been adding things while you've been inside this report, just close out and get back in. You also have a print grid and an export function, which I'll speak to when we get to grid functions. As you can see, when I right click, I have a whole set of items that I can play with. These are just different ways to manipulate this grid. So I like, you know, data type formatting. On anything with values, I might go data type formatting, numeric currency. Okay, but you can also play with the alignment. So column alignment, I can center it, put it to the left, put it to the right, all kinds of things like that. Date time formatting as well. If you want to see a longer date, short date, you have all of those formatting options. Also, when I right click anywhere on whichever name that I'm trying to change, you can also change the names of these. So I see that happen fairly often with maybe like team members. A lot of times people are using team members for their design group. They're the designers and design team. You know, and maybe inside this report, when I'm looking at it during a team meeting, I might just want to make it very clear that that's who the designer is. You know, I can right click on this and adjust the current caption to read designer. So all of these you can rename. That's not going to rename it all over the system. That's only going to rename it in this grid, in this particular grid. So it's a per grid thing. So if I change team members here to designer, that doesn't mean when I go into that project that that heading is also going to say designer. That is not the case. But it does make for really cool customizations and clarity when looking at these different reports. Also, adding to sort. So I went over sorting. So let's say I wanted to sort by decision date, but then maybe I also wanted to sort by the salesperson. You could have multiple sorts. So it'll first sort by the first one that you select, and then I can right click on top of primary salesperson and say add to sort. Sorry, add to sort. And did it do it? Maybe it has to be the other way around. There are definitely items. It is trying to sort it, but I'm in a test database, so sometimes things act kind of funny, but you can do multiple sorts. Grid functions, down at the bottom. So all these changes that I'm making, those are not sticking. If I close out of this current opportunities grid and just got back in it, I've not done anything to say, hey, I want to be able to recall this layout, or I want this to be my default layout when I open up. I will go over that in just a moment. So grid functions, every single grid that you're in, you're always going to see this red dot in the bottom right corner. You're going to see them all over the place. So if I was in, let's say, the bill of materials on this one here, you're going to see that red circle or red dot in the top grid of the bill of materials, and you see a red dot in the bottom grid. So you're going to see it per grid. That is how you'll expose your grid functions, and that is how you'll actually save these. I'm going to go over some grid functions before we talk about saving. So if I hit grid functions, a lot of the items that I was showing you in the top when I right click and say, you know, filtering on, sums on, things like that, you're going to see a lot of the same menu items here. So I'm going to go through just some of the additional ones. So first of all, set export rights. If your user goes into current opportunities and they go to print export copy and it's grayed out, that means that they do not have the rights to export that particular grid. It is a per grid rights. Okay, so if someone comes in and they're like, I'm trying to export something out, can you give me rights to do so? No, I need to know exactly what grid you're in so that I can give you the rights to do so. So if you need to do that, it's grayed out to see your admin. They'll be able to go to that specific grid, set export rights, and give you the rights to export this data out. It's kind of a safety feature. We just don't want everyone just to be able to export anything and walk away with your data. Okay. So that was print, export, copy. You can export to Excel. You can also do a print preview, and you can copy stuff and paste it. But I'm a fan of the export to Excel. I like that one. It exports all this data out, and you can then manipulate it in Excel, which we're all probably comfortable with. But you can also get it kind of ready, so I can move things around, get rid of values that I don't need, get rid of any columns, then export out. That way you don't have to manipulate. But you can do it either way. I like to get it ready inside of eManage, then just export it and have it ready to do whatever I need to do inside of Excel. Okay, so give them the rights if they are grayed out. Just need to ask what grid they're looking at. You also have under grid level options, you do have configure editable fields here as well. You guys are probably mostly used to seeing us go that route. A couple of cool things, just different. It's probably not very cool to show inside the current opportunities, but like display as card view is kind of a cool function. I'm not in the right color scheme to see this really great, but this is just like per project, and your values are over here. I would probably change my color scheme there if I wanted to look at it that way. Current opportunity is probably not a great one to look at, but you might come up with some other cool way to use that functionality. That was under grid level options, display as card view. Okay, just flip it back, click it again. So all of these are, if you click them and you don't like it, click it back. Don't be afraid to get in here and just kind of click around and see what these all do. I'm constantly doing that when I'm trying to get a report ready for someone and playing with something. I might click on these to see what they actually do. But a lot of different options here. Row functions, I really like the size rows based on content. That can be helpful like in my history notes. If you've got lots of notes inside your project history and I want to be able to see the full note without opening it up, I like to configure my layout to size rows based on content. That can be helpful in multiple places. That's just one example. Expand collapse rows, that's what I showed you on that right click. Column functions, you have a lot of different things to do with your summary values. I play with this quite a bit. But yeah, you can, if your summaries are off, so that sum symbol, you can do it from here, turn them on. But you also have different ways to group your summaries or show them at the top or show them at the bottom. So just depending on what exactly you're trying to do and how you're trying to get that view manipulated. If for some reason you're not seeing your field chooser in the top left, you might have accidentally clicked show the field chooser, so just click that back on to show it. I also like to show this off. I'm not going to go in super detail, but build a formula in new column. So column functions, build a formula in new column. You can give it a name. I find this helpful. There might be some reports where maybe I want to get the estimated margin or the estimated profit, and for some reason it's not a value in there that I can already choose from the field chooser. You can do custom formulas by going in here. You have to kind of know how to write this, but it'll tell you, it checks it. It tells you if the formula is good or not good. But you can go through here, and these are all your different options of how you can calculate those formulas and your functions of what you can do. But just like some basic stuff, maybe I want to take the estimated cost minus, and I'm just doing the minus on my keyboard, space estimated sale. Formula compiles successfully. Hit OK, and it puts that test or whatever you named it in there where you can then drag it on there. Then you can format it by right-clicking, data type formatting, numeric, and doing, a standard decimal or whatever. If you need to modify that formula, you don't like how it turned out, right-click on that column header and modify formula. You messed up, you don't want that at all, you can always just back that out and hit OK, and it'll no longer have that in the field chooser the next time that you get in there. If you do custom formulas, you do have to save that grid layout. It won't just keep that custom formula in there for the next go round if you don't save it. So I am going to go over how to save them, some basic stuff here. Sometimes I always say, show the grid toolbar for this layout. If I'm constantly, flipping my different layouts, if you do grid functions, always show the grid toolbar for this layout, and then you save it. This little toolbar right here, instead of hitting the red button and turning it green to get to your grid functions, it'll just always stay that way. So sometimes I expose that when I'm constantly flipping my layouts or something like that. All right, so on to saving. And everything that I'm talking about and more is inside of our help guide. We are getting ready to switch our help guide over to something that's a little bit more user-friendly that you guys can search and whatnot. But what I'm about to go over is under data grids inside of the overview section, saving grid layouts. And it really walks you through a lot of this stuff here. Filtering, working with the field chooser. There's really a lot of really good stuff in there. So if you want to have some backup documentation on what I did. Which reminds me, I did show filters. I like filters. So let's say I manage multiple salespeople, but I am a salesperson as well. Maybe I don't want to look in this instance at everybody's stuff, and I just want to focus on mine for what I'm doing right now. You can always hit that filter, uncheck all, and just check your own name. That's where I see that filter getting applied to most. And I'm just clicking on the filter again, clear filters. You can use it on anything. So filters, you can use it on your job filter numbers. What I really like is also a text filter. And this, maybe not for this, maybe not exactly for current opportunities, but I specifically like this little trick here that I'm going to show you for when I'm doing user rights and trying to determine which rights to give someone, and I'm not exactly sure what category it might be under. I might use the text filter. So I go to hit the filter, text filters, and you can go equals, does not equal. But I typically am using this function or this little trick for something that it contains. So I'm looking for a specific word. And if you're just general as possible, you'll be able to drill down to exactly what you're looking for. So this one is saying, okay, project name contains, and it said DB null here. That just means, empty. So just click your field inside this click your cursor inside this third field here. And if I just type the word order and hit OK, it's going to drill down to anything with the project name with the word order in it. So again, that was under the filter, the little funnel, text filters contains. I'm just going to clear that filter. The filters can also be used for like dates. So maybe I want to look at what's got a decision date hitting maybe this month. So instead of going down here and doing the year, I can come over here to date filter and say, okay, I want to see what's hitting next quarter. So save these layouts, and then you can just flip them. You shouldn't have to hit the filter every time to project for next quarter or this month or whatever. If you're trying to save different projection layouts, what you can do, so I'm moving on to saving these layouts. So I just filter down to, I think I did this quarter, or maybe next quarter, whatever, doesn't really matter. What I'm going to do is come down here. So I expose, again, to get there, you hit the red button. It exposes your grid functions down at the bottom. And this is where you go in to save that. So I'm just going down here. It says save or load grid layouts. So inside that little blank box right there, I'm backing all the way out. Backspace, backspace, backspace. Okay. If for some reason you're seeing your little save icon is grayed out, that typically means you just need to place your cursor in here and just back it all the way out. It wants you to rename it. That you're just activating that save button. So maybe I name this one, ops next quarter. Now, as I add new projects in and new data in, and I save this layout, every time I flip to this layout, it's always going to put that date range on it of next quarter, so whatever your filter is. So what you can do, your options here are to, obviously name it first, and I'm just going to go through what these different buttons are. So the first one is my default. That means that every single time that I open up this grid, I want it to automatically default to this layout up here. That's my personal default. Is public. That means I can give access to other users for them to access it. It won't make it their default, and there's no way to do that other than, company default. But if I choose is public, they'll have the ability to come in here and choose this layout for if they want to open it up and make it their default, awesome. Or if they just want to open it up and view it on occasion, they can do so. The third button over is an X. That's the delete. As you can see, if I scroll over these, it says buttons from left to right and explains it, but it goes away. So you just have to know what they are. Again, it is in our help guide. Just going over everything here. So it walks you through everything, all these different buttons in case you forget. It's a delete button. Be careful with that one. I'd hate for you to delete something that you just went through and manipulated. I know that takes some time to get them the way that you like them. That's the delete, and deletes for everybody. The third one with the hand underneath is I have all the power. That means I can save a company-wide default layout. That is a right. So if you don't have the right to do so, I believe yours will be grayed out, maybe actually gone, period. But I have to confirm that. So that's save for the company default layout. So that means that if I hit this button, every single time anyone opens up this current opportunities, it's going to default to this grid layout. So you want to do that, you want your basic, your company-wide default layout to be the one that everyone's looking at all the time, all your opportunities. You don't want filters on it, really. And then you can save additional layouts to kind of flip between. This one over here before the load, that's the save button. So if I wanted to make this my default and maybe public for others to access, I would then hit the save button for just that one. When you hit the save button, it will default back to it should default back to, oh, you know what? In the test database, we don't have a company default. My apologies. Let me just open up one. So I now have access. I hit this drop down. There's my default right there. But maybe I want to open up this other layout, open projects by salesperson. I select it, hit load, and it just opens it back up there. Okay. So if I made this the company default, now every single time that I open up current opportunities, it's going to default there, and that would be for everyone. So if my apologies, I'm laughing at myself because it's not overriding. It will override anyone who's already saved their own personal default. If an admin goes behind them and saves the company-wide default, the next time that you get in there, it will be the company default, but yours is still in there. So all you need to do is go down, drop that down, grab yours, load, and hit save again. So this gives you the ability to save all different types of layouts. So maybe you're looking at next quarter, last quarter, probability over 50. So any layouts that you would need to just flip back and forth between, you can add them all in. You can add as many as you need. What I suggest, especially for any of my admins, I tend to, I get concerned that someone might delete something that I put a lot of work and effort into getting it the way that I want it. If you're that kind of user and you want to make sure that no one's ever going to delete your work, what you can do is go grid functions, load, save, grid or toolbar layout, save grid layout to file, and you can see I save all my layouts here. Somewhere, grid layouts. So here's all my grid layouts. These are just our default grid layouts for the company. So save them into a folder, and then if someone came in here and deleted it, you can always go grid functions, load, save grid or toolbar layouts, and load the grid layout back in there. Save that back as a company default. One other thing, and I'm going to show you in a different grid here. maybe the backlog. Anytime that you're getting into a grid, it's showing it based off of SQL, so something that's been written out to tell it what data to pull. So I want you to know you have the ability to come in here and go grid functions, view results as SQL, and you can grab this, and this really gives, it allows users the ability to just grab that SQL and just more easily formulate their own data grids. So if for some reason, you know, you needed to grab this and create your own little query and save that query, you can do that. So you could grab this whole thing, copy it, and under analysis, build, use a custom query. I could just paste it right in here. And I can even manipulate it. So if you know how to write SQL and you're like, oh, actually canceled, I want to show me all my canceled orders, or for whatever reason you know how to do that. You can put that SQL query in there and formulate your own query, and then you can save them. I'm not going to specifically go over how to save queries. I think a lot of you know how to save queries. If not, I can go over that. But one thing the question that I get a lot is, how do I share those saved queries? So just file, file, maybe it's under tools, share saved queries. I get this question a lot. You'll create your own queries and then you want people to have access to them. Tools, share saved queries. And as you save those queries in, come over here to queries and they'll be saved over there. So here's an analyze contacts query, analyze companies. It's fairly easy to do. You know, I'm just going to run through it real quick, actually. So let's say I run a company query, and I'm just going analysis, create, run analysis queries, and you have all these different options. I don't know if everyone knows that this is here. You know, you can run all different kinds of queries. So a lot of, you know, I'll get the question a lot, how to analyze, you know, what's out there in the queue for people to complete, what action items are out there, maybe just for my design team. You can come in here and analyze that from here. There's a couple different ways to do that specific function, but just know that create, run analysis queries gives you a bunch of options to come in here and analyze this data. I'm just going to run this query real quick. And again, as that's loading, all of this is in here. So just go into your data grids section in the overview, and it's all in there. I know that searching this can be kind of cumbersome to search your help guide, which is located in the help. View the eManage help file. You kind of have to go to those different tabs and look what you're looking for. The search function doesn't work really well, but we are working to put that in somewhere else. So you can save the query by going up here, saved queries, giving it a name, making it public, hitting save, even apply your layout, so get it all ready to go, apply your layout, hit save, then you can go to tools, share saved queries. And that's how you get, you know, data into this queries tab over here. So if there's a query or, you know, data that you're constantly needing to look at or analyze or just constantly looking at, save those queries in over here so that you don't have to keep running them on a regular basis. You know, because I see a lot of people come in here, analysis, create, run analysis, orders, bookings, and run the same query over and over, save those, and it updates the data as it's going through the system. You also have a bunch, you know, I wanted to go over mostly queries today because this is really the guts of the program on how you can manipulate data and create your own custom reports. But we do have a few pre-built reports. So this is, you know, all queries and data that you can manipulate. And under reports, you do have some pre-built reports. What I mean by that is they're, you know, they look like PDFs. So know that you can access those here. Booking report, your backlog report, profit report, orders completed. That's a big one that I'm not sure that everybody's using. If you're not taking advantage of this profit report, you should definitely be doing so. You guys know that you can access your P&Ls, you know, on a per project level. through the module's final profit. But if you want to look at a bigger overall company level on projects, your profit reports, this is how you would do so. The trigger, as you can see, it says reports, profit report, orders completed. That means that you're triggering that order to be complete. So the only way to get them in there is by completing that order, which we typically suggest to do at the customer payment, the final customer payment. So if you are handling it that way, and the reason we recommend that is that typically gives you enough time to add in all costs and all receivables, typically. Now that's not all cases. You don't want to really complete an order until all costs and all receivables have been applied. That way you're getting the truest costs that you can see, or final, the truest P&L. But this is that trigger there, completed. So it's in the customer invoicing module, but it's also in order entry as well. I typically do it from this screen because when you add new invoices, see if it'll let me, there's nothing to do on this one. I like doing it in this screen because when I hit new invoice, what are we doing? There's a little, yeah, it's not gonna let me. There's a little field inside the new invoice window that says unbilled costs. So at a quick glance, if there's something there, I typically don't want to complete that order until all costs have been applied. So just to give you an idea of kind of what this report looks like, I don't know if I have anything in here. Again, this is we're just in a test environment. You'll at least get an idea. Even without data, good. Data in here. So profit report, you give it a date range. So if you're going by that, final payment date, that's typically that date there. But it gives you broken down, booking credit, order sell price, your total cost, everything broken out, your profit, your GP, broken out by salesperson, but then a total, grand total at the bottom. So that's a great profit report on all projects completed in a certain date range. Again, analysis, create run analysis queries, that's going to give you a whole lot of options there to really manipulate. Under today, just to kind of give you an overview, rundown of the today menu items, all of these should really move through as the project is moving through its different workflow, its different milestones. So if you have not been using the today reports and you want to know how they move from what area to what area, that's all in the help guide in a section called Today-Project Items. Definitely take a look at that. And if you're curious, how do I clean this up? Because I know that there's been a lot of companies that haven't really been taking advantage of this because they didn't understand why something was showing up where. Just reach out to support or reach out to me, and we're happy to help, either help you clean it up or explain to you why something's still in there. Not help you clean it up, show you how to clean it up, I should say. I'm sorry. But under the post-sale grids, you do have quite a bit of options. Current opportunities, everything that's in your system that has been entered as a project, okay? We have changed up, so while we're on that, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of review how the big changes to this report, because there was some big changes. If you have not gone in and had your salespeople or whoever needs to update this grid, I highly suggest you guys do that as soon as possible. Otherwise, you're looking at data that is totally incorrect. But we did update the way that the current opportunities acts or responds. And what that is before it was current opportunities was pulling all projects that have not been booked as a job. Once it has been booked as a job, it was falling off of the opportunities, whether or not you had quotes added on after it had been booked. So it was really easy to lose sight of that opportunity. You guys know that you can do some add-on product or a punch list or just additional project work, and you kind of want to keep it all under that one umbrella. You don't want to have to create an additional project for each punch or each change order or each add-on order. If it's part of that project, it really should stay under that one umbrella for costing purposes and for time saving. You shouldn't have to create a new project every time. if it does fall under that project. But now the way that this report responds is it's going to keep any unbooked quotes in here. So if you're seeing a really old opportunity on here, it could be that there were some old quotes that are still marked as valid, and most likely. So it's really important that whoever is responsible for updating these, typically a salesperson, they know if it's an opportunity, a live opportunity still, or if it needs to be cleaned out. Whether that means coming in here and unchecking valid, which will automatically uncheck most likely, and it'll automatically remove itself from this grid. Okay, or after a refresh, of course. So that was 1552, it just came right off. By unchecking that, that would be the way to clean up if that project was still live, but that was just a quote, maybe an option that the customer did not go with. Definitely need to come in here and clean those up. If it was a lost opportunity, you guys should know, you should be canceling those opportunities and getting it out of here. If you lost it due to budget, or client went with a competitor, whatever the reason may be, you need to get it out of your current opportunities. It's no longer an opportunity, it's a dead opportunity. So right click, and you can do it straight from this grid, right click actions, cancel this project, give it a reason why. Very important to be maintaining those. But I wanted to touch on what the opportunities are, how they're now responding. So current opportunities, once that quote has been ordered, so booked as a job inside of the order entry module, it automatically moves itself to current backlog. So that's just one example. Once it's been fully invoiced to the client, that order comes out of current backlog automatically. And like I said, all of these just move through here as they should, with the exception of maybe a couple, like punch list jobs, that you have to trigger something to go in there by marking it as a hot job. Pending deposit invoices, when a salesperson or quote, whoever's doing the quote, when they present a deposit invoice with the quote to the client, it's going to put it into pending deposit invoices automatically. So that's kind of your, what am I expecting as a deposit to be coming in for my accounting department. Once there's a deposit applied to that order, it automatically comes out. So a couple, little things, vendor acknowledgements. It stays in vendor acknowledgements until it's been received. Once it's been received, it automatically goes into received product. Once it's been added on to an install, to the install calendar, and product's been added on to that install item, it automatically comes out of received product. This is essentially everything that's in your warehouse to be scheduled. So again, please go take a look at the help guide, and so you know exactly how these all work. But if you have any additional questions as you guys start to go through some of these and take a peek, definitely let me know. I'm going to answer a couple questions. Oh, I think I answered that question, Keith. There was a question, how do you eliminate old opportunities that are no longer valid? Either cancel the entire project. You wouldn't want to do that if part of that has been ordered. So if it's just an old opportunity that had an additional quote on it, remember, you just want to come in here and just uncheck valid. So expand out on that opportunity and uncheck valid. If it is a completely lost job, cancel it, okay? Dina, you saying that you have an issue with company default saving when I try to make updates to it. I haven't seen that issue yet, so maybe we talk one-on-one on that one. So typically, again, I'm in a test environment, so, but if this was my default, so if you do have a company-wide default and you're making changes, let's say I get rid of registered, I don't need that on here, I would just come down here and click this button again. No need to rename it or anything like that. It just will automatically save that. So I got rid of registered. Let me just double check today, current opportunities. And I have a default, so it's trying to go to my default, but when I load that, registered is gone. So just make your change and then just hit this button underneath. If you're still having issues, I would just need to see that. Really, support needs to see it. So, but I'm happy to help wherever I can. For the another question from Missy, for the editable fields option, is there a list we can use for the database, or do we need to call in every time? Good question. Let me work on that. Let me see if I can put some type of list together. That's a really good idea. Thank you, Missy. Any chance that we can take that keep our call volume down, we're going to do it. So that's a really good suggestion. Thanks, Missy. There's not right now, but there will be. Other questions? If you want to unmute yourself and chat or chat in. Yeah, no problem. Feel free to chat in any questions or unmute yourself. Okay, good. Thank you, Keith. Keith is saying that his valid column has a number and not a checkbox. So that means that you do not have our company default layout. I can actually send you that layout and it'll do it for you. It'll put it to the way that it should be. So I'm just going to go back. Just going to delete some of these and see if I can get it back to the way it was. So what he's referring to is when he hits this plus sign, this is a number. Really all that means is you need to make, we formatted it to be a checkbox. So what we did, but I'll just send it to you, Keith, but right click, data type formatting, display style, checkbox. So you're just changing it from a number to a checkbox, but it does probably need to be made editable. So you would need to go down to, I'm going to put this on the video if anybody wants to try it themselves, or you can email me and I'll just send you the layout. But you would have to go make that field editable by going to configure editable fields, changing this grid band to quotes for this particular instance, and then valid, which mine's already done, but it would be valid project quotes. Project quote ID is the identity column. You would want to do that for valid and most likely. But again, I can send anyone who does not, for this particular grid, we're having an issue with getting our default company layout into current opportunities. So we do have it saved, support has it, and I have it. So either channel that you want to reach out to, what we can do is send you that layout, and what you would do is go into today, current opportunities, load, save, grid, or toolbar layout, load a grid layout file, go find it, and it would just load it there for you. Then you could save it as your default or manipulate it from there to what you want to see and then save it. But you really do want to start with our base because it is making those fields automatically editable and formatting them the way that they should be formatted. Thank you for reminding me, Keith. And I do actually have a couple of other items that I wanted to go over. Let me see if there's any more questions. Dina, good idea, Missy. Yep, very good idea. Day planners. I know that we have made a couple of changes to the day planners. I'm just going to hit window, close all windows. If you don't know about that little trick, I love that one. I'll have to close every single one. Day planners, we added a couple of new day planner items. So let me just put my notes over. There's a couple things I didn't cover. Tools, configure day planner for profiles. So this is where your admin can go in and configure the day planners for each individual profile. So when I select each profile, it tells me who's in that group. Okay. And then what you can do is say, yeah, I want Shane to have access to check this, and this. So then when he goes view day planner, or I go view day planner, I see all the items that I have access to. So from there, you can choose the ones that you want to see on a regular basis. And what it does is it puts them into little tiles. So let's say these are the 4 that I want to load on every single time that I open up eManage. You can hit Save Currently Opened Items as Startup Items, and it'll just automatically open up with those. Then from there, you can, you know what, today I need to look at this one. You can always bounce around and look at additional ones. Don't click everything if you can help it. That will slow down your startup quite a bit because it's going to be wanting to load that data on every launch of eManage. So don't get crazy, but definitely put the ones on your home screen that you want to see on a regular basis, and then you can flip them around. So from here, I can hit this one and make that a big screen. So these little squares enlarge that particular screen. What we did do was made a big split screen, but if you want to make it one by itself big again, just enlarge that one. You can hit the little X to close out of any. And like I said, you can do some split screens and stuff too. These are each its own individual grid layout. So if there are things you want to do and put, in certain places, save those grid layouts. That way you don't have to do that every single time. The ones that we did add that I wanted to go over today are 30, 60, 90-day projections. That is pulling from your current opportunities grid, and it's pulling everything 0 or greater on the decision date, 90 or less. So in between 0 and 90 days. So you're not going to see everything on this grid like you would in today current opportunities, but just know where it's pulling from. It is pulling from the current opportunities and based off decision days. So if I had a bunch that were due, the decision date was within 30 days, it's going to lump those all up to decision date 30, decision date 90. So it's a really good just 30, 60 day, 90 projection. Again, from here, you can manipulate, change what you need to change. But this one, again, is pulling from current opportunities and only in between 0 and 90 days. That's a really good report. We also added, you already had a POs with 1% plus variance last 90 days. We did create one similar, but it's year to date. So the one underneath it, margin erosion year to date, that's going to give you the same, it's the same data in a sense where it's pulling POs with 1% plus variance, but it's for the whole entire year. We are looking at creating a button that basically like approves that variance so that you can get it to clear off of here. So it's like, okay, I know that that was because of this, and you can just clear it off. So just a heads up on some enhancements we're making to that one, but it is a great year-to-date margin erosion report. It really kind of shocked Stefan whenever he created that I think he did it last year and was like, ooh, I think people would want to see this. So you can you create new day planner items too. That's if you know how to write SQL. I pulled that SQL from that one grid. I showed you how I pasted it in here. You can paste those into day planner items as well and create custom day planners. You do, have to have a little knowledge of SQL unless you just pull it from somewhere else and you just want to put it on your day planner. The only one that's currently unable to go onto the day planner, I believe, is current opportunities because of its enormous amount of detail and the view of it right now, but that is in the works to also make that a day planner item. But, and it may just be a matter of, clicking today, current opportunities, and just going into it there. Maybe you don't need to see it on your home screen. These should really be, at a quick glance, kind of like what's going on in my world. That's what I kind of use my day planner for. So go in and configure those for your users so they have access to them. Definitely when you go in, my admins, if you're on the call, first thing you'll want to do when you go into tools, configure day planner for profiles is hit this import new day planner items at the bottom. That was in the release notes. If you want to see that 30, 60, 90 and that margin erosion additional day planner item, you do need to import new day planner items. Cool. Other questions? Chat them in, unmute yourself, whichever you prefer. Again, feel free just to click around. You're not gonna mess anything up. I promise. Everything can be fixed. So feel free to just kind of play. You can really like nerd out on this stuff. Also, if you're a new or old user, doesn't really matter to me. Doesn't make a difference. If there is ever a report that you feel like man, I really wish I could create this in eManage, or I used to use this report. Is there a way to kind of pull that data from eManage? Reach out to me. I love that stuff. I can hopefully point you in the right direction of where you need to go into the system to pull that data. The answer, unfortunately, sometimes might be that you have to run that report in QuickBooks or whatever. It depends on the report, but as you guys can see, it's robust, and there are lots of ways to manipulate the data to get what you need. One that I recently showed someone that had been on the system for a while that they didn't even know was there. Definitely, like, again, if you're not sure where can I go to pull this data, reach out to me. I want to make your lives, your world easier and more efficient. That's what we're here for. So under search, we have all different kinds of stuff here too. So search customer invoices, search purchase orders. I had a user that didn't even know that was there, and it's like, I just been pulling that out of QuickBooks. It gives you a lot more detail here in eManage, and it's interactive. You can go right into that project, but here I can just search, by vendor, or maybe I'm just searching in general, or by acknowledged ship date, receive date, things like that. You can, anytime you have like these search functionalities, and even the analysis, when I go to analysis, create run analysis, queries, projects, you're always going to have a different list of criteria that you can fill in. Just know that any time that I believe that it'll allow you in every query or search. If you ever just want to hit run query without putting anything in, you absolutely can do so. There may be a handful out there that you do have to absolutely put criteria in, but you can always just hit search and it's just going to pull everything. Then from there, I can manipulate and say, you know what, filter down to just these two. So I don't see any questions being chatted in. So I'm going to say au revoir. Thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate you bearing with me in this whole series. I hope you learned something. We are going to continue these webinars. So if you have ideas, thoughts, what you want to see in these upcoming webinars, they are going to start being monthly. So just reach out to me. Love to hear the feedback, good or bad. It's not going to hurt my feelings. So please reach out to me. Let me know what you guys are thinking, what you want to see, what you want out of us. We love to hear that feedback, and we do appreciate every one of you. So thanks for coming, and this one will be posted on YouTube this afternoon. So everyone have a good day, and we'll talk soon.